It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. I am Fernando Martinez of Chaparral Pavers, your landscaping contractor right here on the Central Coast, the beautiful Central Coast of California. Love being here, working here, and I've got my partner in crime here, Jonathan Araya.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good day.
Yes, absolutely. So today I want to talk about maintaining. This is the show where we give you tips and tricks and advice on landscaping, gardening, hardscaping, lighting, water features, all kinds of fun stuff. And today, getting all those things in and put in is great and fun, and everything looks awesome day one. But then you have to maintain it. You have to see what is it's going to look like in 5 years, 7 years. And Jonathan, you and I were having a conversation about it the other day. How long does a landscape last? When you put it in, like what would the expectations be as to something? I was kind of teasing one of our clients. It's like, we've got a good business because it's not something you set in and it just lasts forever. So as a business model, you have this recurring,
I
need.
agree. And then you're looking at it also, times change. I mean, railroad ties at one point were really in, and now it's like, I wouldn't even use that to put around my trash cans.
Junipers, Euryop daisies, the plant palettes change, it's like
exactly
fashion.
Colors. I mean, gray is in right now heavily. 5 years ago, it was like the browns and the earth tones that were really popular.
And same with it's like you paint your house, or whatever. It's like, okay, well, you paint your fascia boards. It's not going to last forever, it's something that you do, and it's kind of a good thing in a way because, as the paint starts chipping and peeling, you want to do it. Why not pick a different color? Or why not do, hey, let's, paint around have the windows, or something tie in with that color. And in some cases, it's like, what comes first? Do I do the colors of the landscape first? Or match the colors of the home? Do we, and so a lot of times if the house isn't painted yet or needs to be painted within a couple of years, you can tie in some of the colors from the landscape into the house.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And sometimes it's beyond our control, beyond our designer eye. It's something more to do with right now. A lot of people are taking out their lawns. Lawns were in, yes. Especially here on the coast.
That's
people
an excellent
loved
point.
it, So sometimes it's Mother Nature deciding what we're doing to our landscaping.
It's very true, and that's been one of the catalysts that would get you to change and say, well, how long is the landscape going to last? Well, we were in a drought for 5 years and my lawns died. So now you absolutely have to make a change. And so but also what's mixed in there is how you take care of things. And I've always say I'm a big proponent of saying I can be the best landscaper in the world. I can come in there and do all this gorgeous, beautiful stuff and be super talented at it. And provide a customer with that service. But if they don't maintain it, let's say you did absolutely nothing, you just leave the sprinklers on, you don't fertilize, you're not pruning anything, you're not, spraying for bugs or looking for pests or, things are just basically going to start going downhill. It'll take a while. I call it, my range, I think like 3 to 5 years. It's still going to look halfway decent and fixable. If you go longer than that without really doing anything, in some cases sooner, it will really not be a good value for you or resale value for the home or anything like that. So, and then on the other hand, if you do take care of it, you're fertilizing, pruning, you're checking the watering schedule, you're changing things, and you're really kind of in tune, 8 to 10 years, maybe you could stretch that out.
Yeah, because your plants are going to get woody. Some of them are going to die due to heavy frost some years, or anything could happen, an infestation of something.
Especially plant material, for sure.
Yeah, leaves come down and you let them go one season and it covers all your dry creek, river rocks. I mean, I just saw a gorgeous house here in Orchid. It was a decent-sized Spanish-style home. The front yard had a tremendous amount of cobblestones. I mean, it looked like at one point it would have looked beautiful. But the way that it was now, I mean, leaves were everywhere. Some of the plants were dead. The concrete that was there was, I don't know, it just, the color was changing. It had some black mold spots on the concrete, it seemed like. So, I mean, the driveway had cracks in it. The value of your home depreciates, especially if you're on the market to try to sell a home like that.
Yeah.
So I think maintenance is super important. And I think the right products, that's one of the things why we push Pavers so much, is because you're not going to get that cracking. If something happens to where the colors of the pavers aren't as beautiful as they were, you clean them off, you seal them, or do a color enhancement on them, and you're back in business. So I think the biggest thing I was getting at with my point here is choosing the right products is really important for the longevity.
You're 100% correct, and bringing up that specific product, which is why we're Chaparral Pavers, and we love doing that product, is because that is one of the few things out of your landscaping that if you do absolutely nothing and don't maintain it, it will still look good in 5 years, 7 years. But there is, even Pavers has a little bit of maintenance, because everybody's so happy and excited when we first put them in, because the colors are so vibrant and everything's so clean, and it just, let's have a party over here, let's get together, let's have this lifestyle that we've been dreaming of. Now we have this home we can entertain.
Exactly.
And it just starts to lose the luster.
It does.
And that wow factor. And so even as good of a product as Pavers are, I think it's still something that you should clean.
I think you just brought up another great point that I just thought about.
Sure.
You say you like to entertain, you throw parties, but if you keep the same flowers, the same plants, or you don't do anything new, it takes the wow factor away. Every time people come to your house, yeah, you have a beautiful house, but nothing's new, nothing's different. And I know as human beings, we always want to change things up. Women do their hair color different. We get new cars. It's not because they don't work. It's just because we want something different. So I think new plantings often, every quarter, every 3 months or so, I think that's a great idea. And
containers too. You can freshen up with containers, and they're really easy to repot and replant. Plant material is a number one thing to maintain. I mean, obviously, out of some of the hardscaping should be pretty simple. You clean it, you can put sealers on these things, they can be maintained, and you can keep that luster, and you can keep your hardscaping looking vibrant. You clean out, maybe flush and sprinkler lines, or blowing out, gas lines or leaves out of the fire pit, or buying covers for the fire pit or for the furniture to keep things looking nice. But when it comes to really doing, actual maintenance, well, even the copper fire pits that we install, there's a wax that you can spray in with, and the cleaners
for the copper.
And so the outdoor lighting, you can clean the cobwebs and the things. Just because it's something that it can be let go, and the days of, especially if you're removing your lawns and you're getting into this drought situation and just changing it, even the way that maintenance and gardening has evolved, you might not need that weekly gardener every week mowing the lawn if there's no grass, and some of these things can either be done yourself, or if you do want to hire a professional, it shouldn't have to be as often.
I agree. I mean, it's not a matter of whether you could do it yourself or not. It's a matter of if you want to do it. I could see, my yard, it takes maintenance every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. Do you have the time to do it? Do you want to, or time is valuable. Do you want to be really cleaning and pruning and making your yard, dressing it up with fresh bark, or cleaning the concrete every 3 weeks, or you're about to have a party? I mean, that's one of the most stressful things, I think, because you want to keep it clean. It's an area where you want to walk out of your house and just walk into a beautiful yard, but it does take maintenance.
It really does.
And cleaning it.
And I think you're right on the money, because when you're putting a party together and getting ready to entertain, there's a lot of already preparation and food and all this things, and then you got to clean the yard too, and so and then even after. But when it comes to plant material, I want to use the experience we had up in San Luis Obispo. We went over there, and we recently completed a job. The client wanted more work, and then one of the neighbors was looking at us having to do some work for them as well, and it was that classic case of, and sometimes it's not anyone's fault. this gentleman happened to have an issue, medical issue, and needed help, a doctor who's laid up, or, without getting into the details of the situation, he was not going to be going out and maintaining his plants. Now, he had what I would consider a low maintenance landscape, drought tolerant plants. They had the Mexican sage, they had rock rose, they had all, and they were spaced out pretty well, rosemary, some nice, Mediterranean style plants that were, and even the rock rose were still blooming. But if you looked at the yard, it looked tired. They had a dry creek, they had boulders, they had all these things that are what we consider low maintenance. There was no lawn, there was a drip system, there wasn't a whole lot, really to do. And yet even that yard looked very run down and tired because they had, not done anything. And that was only the landscape had been installed years ago. It was a quality install to begin with, I'm sure. And, was looking halfway decent. So it was an older landscape, but then you don't do anything for 3-6 months, like we were talking about every quarter doing something. And just in that time, it just felt like let go. And I know our motto is you love to come home. I love to come home.com. That's what we're all about. And that did not welcome you home, their landscape. And that's why we're a service. That's why we do what we do, because people don't always have the time, energy, or the desire to, or have that, and would rather go to the beach with their family than slaving away pruning bushes all weekend. So the trees. So just take trees alone. And say you got an oak tree. They had olive trees. Let's say you got Japanese maple or some of these trees, and what they do is they grow and they get bushy and they just do whatever they feel like doing and growing. And actually, and if you're doing some of the things like checking the watering and throwing fertilizer out once in a while, but if you're not pruning is huge. And you really kind of do, when it comes to trees, you can mess it up. You should either take a couple of class in tree pruning or look at some things online or hire a professional. That's a whole trade, just tree pruning alone. And having a tree service come out, thinning out the trees, because what had happened, and they even had elm tree in the back, that the canopy had grown so low, and there's so much branches. The oaks were super dense, and just, there were branches. They were walking us through the yard, and we're ducking our heads and trying to go around the trees because things were getting wild. And so I think that's the first thing to look at when you walk on a property and you're looking at maintenance and what's being maintained or not, are the trees. I think every property should have some substantial trees. If there isn't, make a plan for that or put them in, because they really help shade, especially on a hot south facing, and the wall gets really hot. When you put a tree in and it becomes established, older neighborhoods, they're super, super important. That's one of the things I noticed when you go to, like you were talking about going into a home in an established neighborhood here in Orcutt. All the trees, the street trees, the trees of the homes, and those things, they take 10, 20 years to get to size and become an asset and a value to not only that home, but the neighborhood. You go to brand new neighborhoods that are just being built, and they're all new homes. That's great because you get the value in the fact that, everything works in the house. It's brand new.
Exactly.
But there's no trees. And so planning when you plant, for spacing them out so they're not too close to each other, of course, to keep the maintenance down. But once the trees grow, and even in the lowest of low maintenance, they still need to be pruned regularly. And now I don't say you don't have to prune them every quarter, but the more you prune them and the more often you prune them, the better it is. Because if you wait for this, like say we were talking about doing nothing for 3 to 5 years, the difference in how you prune them and the amount you prune off and the size of the cuts can actually damage the tree and make it look much worse. We've all seen those giant, 6, 8 inch, 12 inch cuts on trees. That tells me you waited way too long. That branch was in the wrong place for 10 years before you decide to cut it. And that opens up a wound for that tree. Insects and bugs can get in there. Water can get in there. Rot can start. So the sooner my thing on trees is 2 inches. You should, by the time a trunk is 2 inches thick, you should know whether it's going to be in the right place or not. And if it's not, that's the time to cut it off. And it'll heal within a year's time. It'll kind of, scroll over and kind of like a scab, on a human, where it kind of heal and it'll fill in that spot, and you won't even know And we could get a whole radio show just on tree pruning, of not leaving a stub and, knowing where to cut and cutting at angles and all this kind of stuff. But the bottom line is do them once a year, no more than 2 years without pruning your trees.
I agree. And I think we should definitely have a radio spot just on pruning because I'm amazed at the knowledge that you need to have and the tips and tricks that you might not find out without the experience of somebody that knows what they're doing. So I think that's a really good point. I think flowers too. A lot of the ground covers will be invasive in a sense.
So let's take a break there and let's pick up on flowers on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. If you're thinking about putting in a new Pavers patio or a paver driveway, call Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. The best paver installer on the Central Coast. Check out their portfolio and customer reviews online. ILoveToComeHome.com. That's Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. And on the web, ILoveToComeHome.com.
And we're back. So pruning is what we were talking about before our commercial there. So one of the other things that we like to talk about is how to improve your landscape on a budget. What do you suggest in regards to that? Let's say, I don't have the most money in the world. I want to go ahead and improve my yard. I've already done all these great things to it. What else can I do that's going to be low cost to make my yard look beautiful? Do I hire out a company to come clean it and kind of add some vibrancy to the project? Do I plant new plants? I mean, what do you think makes the biggest impact to a landscape project?
Well, that's a great question. There is a type of plant that's called annuals. And the reason they call them annuals is because they only live about a year, 6 to 8 months sometimes. But they give you that Disneyland effect. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that. When you go to Disneyland, what do you see?
We do.
You see color everywhere.
Yes.
You see manicured and, shapes and designs. I mean, they take it over the top. But
so you're telling me those plants, how often do you think they're refreshing those plants or switching them out?
Yeah, like I'm saying, I mean, the soonest, I think they should last at least 6 months. And sometimes you can get a year out of them. 8 months seems to be about 8 to 9 months, and they're seasonal. So in the wintertime, we have cyclamen, pansies. You can, these cool season kale. There's different colors of kale, which are really cool, but they like the cold weather. And I know it's tough here on the Central Coast because we don't really have a big weather shift, but it does when the nights start cooling down, and that's to me it signifies. The nights are cool. Yeah, I complain about it's cold outside. I want to sit by my fire pit, whatever. That's great. But when I'm talking when the cold really changes and there's a chance of frost, and those are the times when you plant those types of annuals. In the springtime, and when the nights start being as cold and you start getting warmer evenings and warmer days, that's when you plant petunias, begonias, impatiens. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I was thinking of primrose, but those will be more for the cool season. Geraniums.
I mean, so essentially, you don't have to be a crazy plant, guru. You can go down to Home Depot, Lowe's, these box stores, and you can find some nice annuals and plant them and use them for the color. Yeah, for temporary color throughout your landscaping.
And that to me has a major impact. Yes, about the most impact, and in containers. They work great in containers. You can do one perennial in the center of a pot, and then you can surround it. And some of them, what they call annuals, will go 2-3 years. Geraniums will go 2-3 years. Bacopa, we use that. Your parrot's beak that we love to use, the drape lotus, over the pot. Yeah. They go 2-3 years because they get big quick, but then they die out, and they have to, so I call them they're short-lived perennials, annuals. You can do things from seed. Poppies, cosmos, sunflowers, sweet peas, the list goes on, and those things will come up, you take them out, but those are the things that impact, with those bright colors, and...
Talking about annuals, I think I just ran into an interesting fact. We talked about Disneyland earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing how Disneyland Resort alone uses 1 million annuals every single year.
Wow.
They have over 17,000 trees and 100,000 shrubs planted throughout the park. I'm not saying your house is going to be like Disneyland, but one of the things to look at is maintenance. Keep adding color. Keep adding depth. Another thing they do is use over 5,000 gallons of paint just to restore the building.
Well, and that's a good point, too, because just a fresh coat of paint on something as easy as a fence or a trellis. We did some trellises, and we put espalier apples instead of a vine on there, but we painted the trellis. And as that, it gives another color, it gives another vibrancy. So paint, annuals, pots, freshening up, cleaning the pavers, and any one thing that you do is only going to give you so much impact. It's only going to have so much effect on how the yard, is perceived and looks overall. Doing a bunch of little things end up adding up to a big thing. So if you just went and pruned and just washing the leaves off, sometimes things get dusty and dirty outside. You rely on the drip system to just drip under the bark. It never washes the leaves off. And some years when we don't get a whole lot of rain, it's good to water all the way around all the plants, wash everything off. I wash the fence off. You can hose the house down. Some people have the house pressure washed and cleaned. You have the pavers cleaned. That will add a little bit. Planting annuals will add a little bit. Refreshing up pots or bringing in new pots and new colors will add a little bit. And all these little bits of things add up to the yard coming across, and it doesn't even have to be any large one thing. I added this massive, seat wall and a fire pit, or it doesn't have to be that project every time. All those little things end up making a big difference and making the yard feel new again, fresh again. And, I really think 21st century gardening should be done almost quarterly. And instead of mowing the lawn every week, get rid of the lawn or do the artificial turf or whatever it is, get these low maintenance landscapes in, because the tide has changed. I've seen a lot of landscaping change from giant lawns, 3-foot flower beds around. You do the redwood 6-inch dog ear fence, and there you're done. You got a landscape, to tearing the lawn out, doing features and fire pits and seating areas and pavers, and really drought-tolerant plants, dry creeks, and using materials that will last a long time but still need to be maintained. And the maintenance cost should be less, and different types of things can be being done, because I have a gardener. He doesn't wash off anything. He doesn't clean the hardscape. He doesn't prune the trees. He doesn't do, it's just they're so set and basic on cut the lawn, edge the thing, and blow all the leaves out.
The first thing that comes to mind when I think of something like what you're describing is an estate manager. Most people can't afford to have an estate manager 24/7 on their property, But one of the things that I think about is an estate management service that can go ahead and take care of all that, pressure wash, clean, make the entrance look clean, prune the leaves of the plants around the entrance or, around the backyard, trimming the trees. All these things I think are going to equate to a longer, happier life, the enjoyment of your home alone without having to worry about, oh my gosh, I got to get out there on my knees right now. I got to pull these weeds. I got to trim this back, have a party, and then I got to worry about the cleanup at the end.
And it's either you've invested a lot of money in putting the landscaping in to begin with, and it's really added value of maintaining it is huge, because you get a lot more bang for your buck over the number of years that it lasts, because it's not going to last forever. Nothing does. But versus, or even if you were to buy a new home with an existing landscaping and say it hadn't been maintained, but you maintain it and you just do slight upgrades to it, you're going to have something that's way worth more for very little amount of money. And that's where the value is. That's where...
Now you bring an interesting fact, and we get this question out in the field all the time. Can we put fabric under? Can we put fabric under the bark? Can we put fabric under the rocks, the flagstone, the pavers? I mean, people want to put fabric under everything, but I mean, we've discussed it with them. We've told them that's not really addressing the issue of maintenance.
No.
I think you're prolonging the issue in the beginning of maintenance, but then it's going to cause even a bigger issue years down the road when the material starts to deteriorate or it shifts.
There's sediment on top. The weeds are growing on top of the material, and Anywhere you go to cut it, because you have to plant anyway, so you're cutting it for the plants. You're cutting it to seam because it's not the right size. You have to use multiple pieces of it. There's edges everywhere. So the weeds are growing on the edges. They're growing in the seams. They're growing where the holes are where you've cut for the plants. And sediment is constantly going in on top, especially if it's bark. Bark is the worst thing you could put on top of a weed barrier, and it's because it breaks down and it becomes a soil-like material. So now you've got soil underneath and you've got soil on top. Also what it does, which we learned about in many products that we use, is sediment clogs. When we're putting in a sock drain system or a French drain, you don't want, the whole idea is that it doesn't get all clogged up with silt and fines. And when that happens on the top of the weed barrier, it doesn't allow air, doesn't allow water, doesn't allow fertilizer through. And it's going to get clogged, and it's not going to take very long. And so anyway, you get the sediment on top, you pull the weed, and the fabric comes up, bark gets underneath, the rock gets underneath, and then you see this, and it looks terrible, and it takes a lot of work to get it out of there. And here you've paid this money for this product that's supposed to help you with maintenance, and it actually ends up being a hindrance in the long run. The barks are supposed to naturally improve the soil, the conditioning of the soil, and becoming compost for the plants. The best way to do it is to dig down, and this is why nobody does it, is to do it right. You have to be 3 inches or 4 inches below all the concrete areas and below the borders and below the bender board or whatever it is that's bordering even the fence or whatever, and you've got to get rid of that
board,
soil.
That's a whole nother issue.
Well,
let's not even talk about that. There's so many other ways to edge, and I feel that's part of the maintenance, choosing the right products, because later on you're going to have to replace those products. Choose the right products.
And so just to finish on the point is that if you get 3 to 4 inches of bark that thick, that is the weed barrier. If you have 3 or 4 inches of rock where you're digging down, you can't even find the soil, how's a weed going to grow in that? They can't. And if they do, it's very weak and really easy to pull up. It amends the soil, and it's just there's nothing that can go wrong later by having a really thick layer of bark. So that's the right way to do it. It's the best way to do it. That's how we do it. And that's part of why, we use the expertise that we have and pass it on to our clients.
So that's why I religiously believe in choosing the right products from the beginning, not kind of skimping on it or saving or budgeting or this and that. You know what? If you can't do it all from the beginning, do it in sections, but go with the best products. When we talk about fabric, there's different ounces of fabric, and the most fabric that you see out there in backyards is the 1 to 2 ounce. When we do use fabric, which is very rarely under rocks, by the customer's request, we're going with the 5 ounce fabric that's black and it's permeable to where it allows water to still flow through.
Yeah, you want the woven, and you want to do it in an area that you're not going to landscape.
Exactly.
There's no plant material in there. There's very few edges, and you put it down, and you still do 3 to 4 rocks, 3 inches of rock. People ask about it under decomposed granite, which makes no sense.
I agree.
At all.
One of those things that we touched briefly was edging. You know how I feel about that. I think a lot of the clients that I work with know how I feel about that. The plastic edging is going to expand and contrast. The ends are going to start to come up. Again, I think that falls under that category.
Maintenance, and you got to fix it and restake it and trying to get it to look good. You're almost better off with no edging.
So in review, choosing the right products from the get-go is really important. I think another second thing that's really important to that is maintaining the property.
That's what the key word is right there. Clean the pavers, wash off the homes, fresh coats of paint, new annuals, plants to put in containers, keeping things fresh, even bringing in a new color. We had a party at my house, and there's a type of geranium that's called Caliente Fire. And, oh my God, the red is incredible. And so what I did was I bought a dozen of them, and I just put them in pots, and I had a couple baskets, and I just set them around the back porch, and I planted a couple in some pots, and just gave me that fresh pop of color that I was looking for, and just changed the area just enough to give it that new and fresh and vibrant. So maintenance is definitely, not only is it a necessary thing, it's an asset for keeping the value of an existing landscaping or new landscaping up. So thanks for joining us today on the show, and you can find Chaparral Pavers on the web at ilovetocomehome.com, 805-588-6917. We will see you next week. Have a good week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetocomehome.com to find out more or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chats here on KSMA.